All right, so this is the last set of notes for Unit 5. So there will be a unit test coming up pretty soon. Remember, the general idea of this whole unit is they're giving us information, and based on that information, we have to come up with an equation, okay? So this last section is basically the idea of they're going to describe one line, and we're going to figure out another line based on that description. Okay, so there's this idea of parallel and perpendicular. Okay, parallel, you can see in the picture there, means that the lines, they never cross each other. Okay, what that means in terms of slope is that these two lines are going to have the same slope. Okay, versus perpendicular. Perpendicular lines are lines that cross like perfectly. They make that 90-degree angle. Okay, and the idea with slope there is that the slopes are not the same, but they're like exact opposites of each other. Okay, we say in math, we say that those are opposite reciprocal slopes. Okay, and basically opposite reciprocal, well, that is a fancy way of saying we take the opposite of it, so positive becomes negative, negative becomes positive, and the word reciprocal is a fancy way of saying flip. Okay, so if one of those lines has a slope of 2, the other line would have a slope of, flip that 2 upside down, would be 1/2, and make it a negative, so negative 1/2. Okay, and the general idea is they're going to give us some information. For example, they'll describe one of the lines, so they'll describe this one, and based on that, we're going to want to write an equation for this line. This would be our equation. Okay, so they're describing a different line, and based on that, we're going to come up with our own line. Okay, same thing with perpendicular. They'll describe how these two lines are interacting with each other. So they're describing one line, and we'll have to come up with another one. Okay. All right. So it sounds a little bit confusing, but it'll make sense when we get through a problem. So the key here is, if you have a highlighter, I would definitely recommend highlighting. I'm just going to circle it in black. When you have parallel lines, we have the same slope. So the m's are going to match. Okay. Versus perpendicular, this one's a little more challenging one. They don't have the same slope, but they have the opposite reciprocal slope. So you have to take the slope, flip it upside down, and change the sign. Okay. All right, let's go through a couple examples. You can see kind of what the idea here is. Okay. All right, so first one. And again, the questions are going to start the same way they have been the entire time. Okay, so write the equation of a line that. Okay, so again, all information or all the questions have always started out that same way. Write the equation of a line that, and then they'll give you some information. Okay, so write the equation of a line that, and let's say goes through 2, 2, and is parallel to y is equal to 2x minus 5. Okay, now we're looking for an equation, right? They gave us an equation in the question, but it's not like we can just use that as our answer, right? We have to come up with our own. Okay, so the information they've given us is they give us a point, right? So we have a point right here, an x1 and a y1. And then they've kind of told us what m is, but not directly, right? So they use this word parallel, okay? Remember, parallel means same slope. So whatever the m of this equation is, that's the m for our equation, okay? So the number that's in the m position is 2, okay? So they're basically telling us the m in our equation is also 2 because it has to match. Now, a lot of students get confused they automatically assume that our b value is going to be -5, which is not true. We can't use this same equation. So this is telling you nothing. Okay, we can't use that because we have to come up with our own equation that's parallel to that. Okay, the only thing we get from this is that the slopes have to match, the m's have to match. So because m in that equation is 2, the m in our equation is also 2. Okay, so now we can go and do the process we did in the last video notes, right? So we have a point, we have a slope, so we can use that point slope form. All right, y minus y1, m x minus x1. And we'll go through and we'll replace the pieces that we know. We know what y1 is, we now know what m is, and we know what x1 is. Okay, so we're going to replace just those highlighted parts. Make sure when you write it out, those black minus signs, those are going to be still there. Okay, so be careful of possible double negatives. So let's write it out. So we have y minus, again, write it out first, and then y1, we now know is 2, taking it from there. So 2. If that was a -2, you would put a negative in there as well, and you'd have a double negative. Okay, equals m, we also know is 2, times x minus, and then x1, also 2. So a bunch of 2's. Okay, so that's point slope form, but let's go a little bit further so we can get slope intercept form. So this is point slope. Most of the time, they do want you to go to slope intercept. Okay, so let's go ahead and multiply this out. So y minus 2, multiplied out 2 times x, 2x, 2 times -2, -4. And then last step is to move that -2. So we'll add it to the other side. Line across. These cancel. And we're left with y is equal to 2x. And then -4 and 2 make -2. And there's our equation in slope intercept. Okay. So again, the only thing that the word parallel does and helps us out is that whatever the slope is in that equation has to match the slope in our equation. So they're basically telling us that our m's have to match. So our m is 2 if they use the word parallel. Okay. Now, if they use the word perpendicular, that's a different story. Okay, so let's do one of those. Again, if you need to pause the video to catch up, go ahead and do so. All right, let's do one more together. And again, it's going to start out the same way. So write the equation of a line that. Okay, and this time let's say that goes through 1, -5, and is perpendicular to, and let's go with the equation of y is equal to 1/8 x plus 2. Now don't let the fraction scare you, okay? It's not gonna be that bad. All right, so again, we'll look at the information, see what it is they're giving us. So again, they are giving us another point, okay? So we know x1 and y1, okay? And then they're throwing this word perpendicular out there, right? So perpendicular, that's the opposite of parallel. They're basically telling us what the slope is without giving us directly, right? So perpendicular means we're going to take the slope, which in this case, the m is 1/8. Okay. Now, if the word was parallel, we would use that 1/8. Perpendicular means we have to change it. Okay. Perpendicular means opposite reciprocal. Okay. So 1/8 is going to flip around and become 8/1. And then the word opposite means you have to change the sign. So because it was positive, now it's negative. Okay, so it flips around and changes sign. Negative becomes positive, positive becomes a negative. And the fact that it's over 1 means that we can just simplify it. So the slope that we're going to use is -8, okay? So that's how to approach it if it says perpendicular. You take the slope, you flip it upside down, and you change the sign, okay? So this is the slope we're using, and this is the point we're using. And now we're back to our same process. Point slope form, fill in the pieces, and then we can change it into slope intercept. Okay, so let's go ahead and do that real quick. Y minus y1, m, x minus x1. Okay, and the pieces that we know, y1, m, x1. All right, let's go ahead and fill it in. All right, so y minus. Okay, y1, if you notice, this is what I was talking about in the previous question. Y1 is a -5. So watch what's going to happen. We're going to put a -5 in here. So this is going to be a double negative. So that first black minus sign is always there no matter what. The second minus sign is because the 5 is negative. Okay. Then we have m. M we now know, again, is that -8. Okay, so -8. And then x minus x1, which we know is 1. Okay, so that's point slope. Now let's change it to slope intercept. Okay, so let's take that -8, multiply it across. We can also take care of this double negative right here, where double negatives make positive. So we have y plus 5, and then -8 times x, -8x, and -8 times -1, the negatives are going to cancel, and then 8 times 1 gives us +8. And then last step, get rid of that 5. So we get the final answer of y is equal to -8x, and then 8 minus 5 gives us 3. Now we have slope intercept. Okay, so that's how you approach the questions when they use the word parallel and perpendicular. They're essentially they're telling us what the slope is, what m is, without actually like saying it directly.